Well, good morning. Brother Mike and Sister Rachel have gone to visit their grandchildren, have had an opportunity to go, and so they'll be gone for a couple of weeks. Next week, I believe Brother Phil Taylor will be speaking, so I'll be coming to hear him next Sunday morning for Sunday school. But this morning, we're going to continue our study of Matthew and going to Matthew chapter 10. Matthew chapter 10. Jesus is sending out his disciples to minister. And I'm just going to read down into verse 7. Of course, you can read the rest of the chapter yourself. But this morning, let's just start with verse 7. And he says, "And as ye go, preach, saying, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, raise the dead, cast out devils. Freely you have received, freely give." And then just verse 9, "Provide neither gold nor silver nor brass in your purses. That as ye go, preach, saying, the kingdom of heaven is at hand." I'm going to talk as much as I can this morning about the kingdom of heaven. But what does he say in this verse talking about that? He says, as you go, preach, saying the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Now, he's sending them out, but he's sending them out in different places. All of them are different as individuals and personalities. And he's sending them out all to the various cities around Galilee. And so, but that term, as you go, I think has another application to it that we can even consider. And we could even say that as we go through our lives, whatever it may be, whether it's a housewife, whether it's an electrician, a plumber, businessman, whatever your life is, that as you go through your life, you're to preach the gospel. Amen. That as you have opportunity and the occasion arises, that as you go step by step, day by day through your life, then you are to preach what Jesus says here. And what he specifically says, he says that you are to say, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. You know, so many times we think that, we've gone to witnessing classes and we've talked about witnessing. And I don't know, we still, at least ways in my mind, and as I think about it, we still think that, that's the pastor's job, that's the missionary. That's what the missionary is supposed to do. They go to a country and preach the gospel to those that have never heard it. The pastor goes to a church and he preaches the gospel. But I think Jesus, number one, he was talking to a large group of people, which included his apostles, but is a large group of his disciples that he was sending out. And he's saying, as you go. And I just put that into your thinking, that I think that's an application of this phrase. That as we go through our life, whatever our life is, that as we go through it, we will tell others about Jesus. And according to this morning's lessons, we're going to say the kingdom of heaven is at hand. So what is he saying? This preach thing, I know that might scare us all off about preaching. St. Francis of Assisi, he had a saying, and he said this. He said, preach the gospel to every creature, and when necessary, talk. Preach the gospel to every creature, and when necessary, talk. And so what he's doing there, of course, is just emphasizing what we do and how we treat people, how we act, and all of these things. And then as we do have opportunity, we can speak and we can tell them about the kingdom of heaven. So what are we talking about as far as the kingdom of heaven? That really stuck with me, and apparently Matthew thinks a lot about it because he uses that phrase, the kingdom of heaven, 32 times in his gospel. Now, he does use the term kingdom of God once or twice, but he mostly uses this term talking about Jesus' ministry and what he was doing on earth as the kingdom of heaven. And I just encourage you this morning to, of course, with the help of the Holy Spirit, to think about the kingdom of heaven. And to think about the differences that exist between the kingdom of heaven and the kingdoms of this world. Because there's great differences. And in fact, we just read a few. We just started into a few that he talks about on into this chapter. But what does it say from the kingdom of heaven? He says, saying, go and preach, saying the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, raise the dead, cast out devils. Freely you have received, freely give. That is a small part of the kingdom of heaven that we're talking about. And as we go through our daily lives, again, whatever it might be, whatever the circumstances of our individual lives might be, that as we go through it day by day, that we preach saying the kingdom of heaven is at hand. What does it mean to be at hand? There's something at hand. It means that it's there, it's available, it's accessible, it is near. It is something, if you have a tool or if you have a cooking utensil at hand, it means it's right there, available to you for your use. That all you have to do is to take it and to use it for what it was meant for. And that's our message to people, folks, that as we go, we preach, we say to people around us, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. What are we saying? It's available to you. It is accessible to you. That whatever this world has done in your life, however you've been used and abused, however you've been hurt, depressed, whatever has gone on in your life, in the kingdoms of this world, the kingdom of heaven is available to you. It is at hand. It's there. And Jesus came to provide the kingdom of heaven to people. A whole new way of thinking, a whole new way of living. Like I said, he goes on and he says, these are the things of the kingdom of heaven. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cast out demons, set people free. On and on. These are the things of the kingdom of heaven. And he's talking to people that had received those things by faith. By faith, they had received those things. And now he's challenging them to go out and as they have freely received, to freely give. Freely give. Without charge, without expense, without any of that, is that you have received it freely. Now you go, and as you go through your life, you tell others about the kingdom of heaven, and you freely give it to them. The kingdom of heaven. There's so much that we go through this chapter. I couldn't even begin to go through all of these things that Jesus talked about. It's going to be up to you to read through them. But he does make this statement, provide neither gold nor silver nor brass in your purses. That's quite a challenge. I read a book by a Chinese pastor by the name of Watchman Nee, and he made a statement that shocked me here in America. He says, but if a man cannot trust God for his finances, if a man cannot trust God for his finances, he lacks the first qualification for the ministry. Boom. That rocked me back on my heels. You know, I heard a lot of qualifications and things like that for you to be in the ministry. But I'd been in long enough to where I recognized the truth of that. I recognize the truth of that. If you cannot trust God for your finances, you're going to be in trouble in the ministry. You're going to be in trouble. And he talks about that we are providing neither silver nor brass for our purses. Like I said, we can go on, but I'd like to talk this morning about the kingdom of heaven and the kingdoms of this world. Now, let me just read a couple of verses here. This is in John 18:36. John chapter 18, verse 36. The kingdom of heaven, the kingdoms of this world. To think this morning, and in one particular way, about the human desire for power. The human desire for power. Because it's that produces the kingdoms of this world. Well, Jesus makes this statement to Pilate. He's being tried before Pilate. And so there Pilate is in all of his Roman glory and power, Roman soldiers standing around, all of this kingdom of this world standing there. And this is what Jesus says in John 18:36. Jesus answered and said, my kingdom is not of this world. Now, folks, I've got to get hold of that. You've got to get hold of that. Jesus is standing there and he's saying, my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then would my servants fight, that I should not be delivered to the Jews. But now is my kingdom not from hence. What is he talking about? He's saying, and in this way here, he's talking about the kingdom of heaven. And it is not a kingdom of this world. Let me just jump ahead. No, let me do another verse first. Matthew again talks about it in chapter 20, verse 25. Chapter 20, verse 25. But Jesus called them unto him and said, listen, you know that the princes of the Gentiles exercise dominion over them. Are you hearing that? That's the kingdoms of this world. That the princes of the Gentiles exercise dominion over them. And they that are great exercise authority upon them. But it shall not be so among you. But it shall not be. This is the way the world is. This is the kingdoms of the world. There are thousands and even millions of men and women, I'm sure, that desire to have dominion and to exercise authority and to have all of this power this desire for power over other human beings all through this world, all through history. He's saying that's the way it operates. That's the way it is. But he looks at his followers and he says, but it's not going to be that way among you. I'm afraid, folks, that the whole lot of the church is just trying to imitate the kingdoms of this world. I've heard it put this way, is that the church has become worldly and the world has become churchy. This flip-flop craziness going on. I love the other day I was listening to a man talking about Karl Marx. And Marx did a great study of history and of humanity and about the oppressed and those in power and those who are not in power. And he did a great study of it. And whether you agree with him or not, there's a whole lot of people that do agree with him. And there's a whole lot of people that agree with him that's right here in the United States. There's a whole lot of people, if you scratch them, you're going to find a Marxist. You're going to just right below the surface, you're going to find whatever whitewash they have over their methods and values and all of these kind of things, you'll find a Marxist. And I heard just the other day that one man was saying, we have found out, this is what he is saying, we have found out that, Marx was an atheist. He was a Jew, but he was an atheist. And so he wrote the Communist Manifesto, all that stuff, 1848. He writes this after studying it. But he was an atheist, and he promotes atheism. Well, this person was saying, we have found out that Marxism as atheism doesn't work. It doesn't work. So what we now need, we need to have Marxism with Christianity. Are you following what I'm saying? That's what they're talking about doing, is taking Marxism and mixing it with Christianity. And the idea is that, well, Marxism is the answer, and that's the way to go, and we just haven't done it the right way. And so now the right way is, let's just forget the atheism business, and let's just mix it all with Christianity. Do you see that happening? I do. I see it happening. I see it taking places in churches. And what is the idea behind Marxism is that you have the oppressors and you have the oppressed. You have those who have power, you have those who don't have power. And you see that attitude, and that those who don't have power need to take over and have power. And you just see this process. And he, like I said, he looked through history, studied history, and he saw this and he recognized it. And I believe that is true. Because in the kingdoms of this world, there are those that have power, and there are those who don't. And those who don't are doing everything they can to get the power from those who do. And so where did all that start? How did that all begin? Well, let's go back to Isaiah. Or I tell you what, let's start, get my pages. Let's start in Ezekiel chapter 28. This is an important verse. If you have some way of marking this so that you can refer back to it, I suggest that you do. But Ezekiel chapter 28, verse 12. Kind of just, what do you call that? You just put a mark somewhere in your thinking about this. Ezekiel chapter 28, verse 12. Son of man, take up a lamentation upon the king of Tyrus, and say unto him. Now he's talking to a king. Remember, we're talking about earthly kingdoms kind of how they operate, what they do. And so Ezekiel's taking up a lamentation, or he is talking to this king of Tyrus. But it's clear that as we go through this, he's talking to someone else along with the king of Tyrus. It's as if the picture to me that is being presented is, here's this king sitting on his throne, but standing behind him is another. Okay, let's read through it. And say unto him, thus saith the Lord God. Listen, thou sealest up the sum, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. Thou hast been in Eden. That's an interesting phrase. Thou hast been in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was thy covering, the sardius, topaz, and the diamond, the beryl, the onyx, and the jasper, and the sapphire, and the emerald, and the carbuncle, and the gold. Picture that. The workmanship of thy tabrets and of thy pipes was prepared in thee in the day thou wast created. Thou art the anointed cherub that covereth. And I have set thee so. Thou wast upon the holy mountain of God. Thou hast walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. Oh, now listen to this. I mean, this ought to shake you. This is what he says. Thou wast perfect in thy ways from the day thou wast created. Verse 15, Ezekiel 28, verse 15. Thou wast perfect in thy ways from the day thou wast created, comma. Wow. Till iniquity was found in thee. Who's he talking about? Who do you guess he's talking about? I've never been in the Garden of Eden. I've never walked on the mountains of God. I ask you again, okay, no more rhetorical questions. It's Lucifer. It is Satan. What I just read to you, Lucifer, Satan. Did you read all of the description of him? Maybe I need to go back and read it again. The anointed cherub that covereth. And I have set thee so. Thou wast upon the holy mountain of God. Thou hast walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. Thou wast perfect in thy ways, till iniquity was found in thee. God created angels. Do you realize that? They are created beings. They are not eternal. They are not omnipresent. They are none of these things. They are powerful, spiritual beings. God created them. And this one that he describes. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 14. Now, I haven't left my topic. I'm talking about the desire for power. And we're getting to the human desire for power in every human being. Isaiah chapter 14. Beginning in verse 12. While you're turning there, Isaiah 14:12, do you realize this is where sin begins? That verse, Ezekiel 28:15, that's where sin begins. It wasn't in the Garden of Eden. It was here. And God's creation was perfect until that one iniquity was found in him. And then he led the rebellion of the angels, and they were cast out. And now we'll read in Isaiah 14, verse 12. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, remember, iniquity was found in him. For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend unto heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. Probably talking about the other angels. I will sit upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. Jesus told us that hell was created for the devil and his angels. Hell was created for the devil and his angels. Hell was created because of Lucifer, son of the morning, who was perfect in all his ways until iniquity was found in him. Until, as it says in Isaiah, I will be as God. And he followed that, I will ascend, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God, all of the other angels. And I believe that he even thought he could do it above the Son of God. That's another, as Mike says, that's for another time. But he's cast down. And hell was created for him and those other angels that followed after him. But at its root and at its core was the desire for power. I am not going to be submissive. I am not going to do what I'm told. I want to be in charge. I want the power in my life. You go to Genesis chapter 3, verse 4. Excuse me. And the serpent said to the woman, Ye shall not surely die. For God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes will be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. You will decide what's right or wrong. You will decide what is right and what is wrong. You will know good and evil, and you will be. Do you see? He hadn't changed a bit. In whatever time that existed between him rebelling against God and being cast out, he hasn't changed a bit. And now God has created man and woman in the Garden of Eden, and now he comes, and the same thing, the same desire for power. Ye shall be as gods, and knowing between good and evil. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to eat, and a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took it and ate it, and gave also to her husband. The desire for power. The desire for power. The idea that there is the oppressed, there is the abused, there are those that are kept down, there are the poor, they are all of these things. And they desire to not be that way. Is it interesting that he came to the woman? Whatever. I'll stop right there with that. But then we go on, and Adam, in Genesis 4, verse 1 and 2, and Adam knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain, and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. And she again bare his brother Abel, and Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. So we see here that children are born and that Cain is the firstborn. Have you ever heard of the term primogeniture? Ever heard of that? Well, it's a name given to what has happened all through history of where the firstborn male gets the inheritance. The firstborn male gets the inheritance. Folks, that's the way it's been in all kinds of cultures, all during history. You read it in the Bible, you find it all through the Bible. The firstborn male gets the inheritance. All through it. And you go over to Britain and you can see it now. That it's the firstborn of their aristocracy, you know, the dukes and the earls and all those people that still exist in Britain. It's the same thing. Read Jane Austen, for pity's sake. She goes crazy over it. But the firstborn male gets the inheritance. And if there is not a firstborn male, there's all kinds of trouble. Look at Henry VIII, on and on and on. All other cultures, not just them, all other cultures. But the power of the inheritance comes to that firstborn male. And I simply suggest to you, I know there have been books and sermons written over Cain and Abel. But what the conflict throughout history is, those in power want to keep it. And those not in power want to get it. And that's the history of mankind. And I suggest to you right here is that Cain was the firstborn, and whatever, and you say, well, that's way back there. I don't care. This desire for power and this idea of the firstborn goes clear back then. And let me see, as the youngest of four brothers, I'm a little familiar with the firstborn son. I won't get into all that right now, but maybe y'all have thought about birth order and things like that, of what influence it may have. But this idea of the firstborn son, and I suggest to you that Cain desired to keep that power. And what does it say? It says that when the offerings were made, but unto Cain and his offering God had not respect. And Cain was wroth, and his countenance fell. Cain said, I'm not going to lose my power. I'm not going to lose that inheritance. I'm not going to be demeaned. And as it says here, they're not going to disrespect me. Now that's just, you can take and do what you want to with that. But I'm just telling you from the very beginning, human beings have gone through this desire for power. They want it. Let's go to Genesis chapter 6. Genesis chapter 6 is verse 1 through 5. And it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them. Men began to multiply. Well, sons were born, but daughters were born unto them. Then the sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair, and they, listen to this, listen. Now, I mean, okay, I'm not going to get in who the sons of God were or whatever, but whoever they were, listen to what it says. They saw the daughters of men that they were fair, and listen to this, listen. They took them wives of all which they chose. You. They took wives of all that they chose. Isn't that an interesting aspect of power? I mean, what are you talking about? All I'm saying, look at the news. Look at the news. How many men of power that they've done exactly that. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he is also flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. Listen. And there were giants in the earth in those days. And also after that, the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bare unto them children. To them, the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. There were giants. There were, it says that the same became mighty men, which were old, men of renown. Now this is way back before the flood, but we see it happening. Men gaining power over women, men gaining power over other men, men of might, men of renown, others of just physical stature who are giants for whatever reason or however, but that is the kingdoms of this world. And I don't know if you're following my train of thought here, is that I'm trying to get across to you that this is in every atom and of material and every cell of animals and human beings, the desire for power. And it is inflamed, it is excited by the very one who initiated it, and that's Satan himself. That's what started in him. That's what he took to the Garden of Eden. That's what we went into the pre-Noah generations and all of them. It's always been there. I want to be in control. I want it my way. And I just read to you that verse in Matthew chapter 20 says, and Jesus says, that's what the princes of this world does. That's the way the kingdoms of this world operate. That's the way it is. But he says, but among you, it won't be that way. The kingdom of heaven is not that way. And as we go through our lives and we preach, and we are to tell people living amongst the kingdoms of this world and the use and the abuse and all of the things that go on in the kingdoms of this world, that we say that the kingdom of heaven is at hand. I'm afraid a whole lot of churches are trying to be like this world. Jesus told Peter when he cut off the ear of that servant, he said, those that live by the sword will die by the sword. And I suggest to you, those churches that are trying to live by the worldly ways and the kingdoms of this world, they may live by it, but they're going to die by it. And Jesus says, yes, the kingdoms of this world are like that, but it shall not be that way with you. He goes on, going back to Matthew chapter 10. He starts, I don't want to leave this until you, okay, look, you say, well, why are you going on about all of that? Well, it's because I watch TV and I hear about all this woke business. What is it? Transsectional or something like that, or all this vocabulary they've come up with, all these new words, woke. I mean, y'all just kind of nod if yeah, I've heard all those crazy, and I'm going, what are they talking about? What are they saying? What does that mean? I don't even know. And so it's troubled me, and I'm going, God, what is this all about? What woke business and racism and white supremacy and all this stuff that's just whirling around? I'm going, what are they getting at? Well, I'll tell you. You scratch that, and what you find is what I'm just talking about. The desire for power. And I just suggest to you, you look, a good example is the French Revolution. Now, y'all know a little bit about the French Revolution. But the United States revolt stirred them up, and they attacked the Bastille and everything. And they imprisoned the nobles, the king, all of that, And here comes the guillotine, right? The guillotine. Off with their heads. Everyone, if they were found to be members of the nobility, they chopped their heads off. And if you agreed with that, they chopped your head off. Why? It's because they wanted to be in power. It's just, that's what everything is working at, is let's just flip this. We want the ones that are not in power want to be the ones in power. And they will destroy, you can call it revolution, you can call it woke, you can call it civil war, you can call it all kinds of things. But see what I'm saying is that you can use all kinds of words to describe it. But at its root, what it is, you can call it feminism. You can call it all kinds of things. You can use all kinds of words and vocabulary. But what it boils down to is I'm not in power and I want to be in power. And that usually involves the destruction of those that are in power. But I go back to the French Revolution, that it is so interesting. In a matter of decades, there's Napoleon. There's Napoleon. What had they gained? I mean, you go to the Russians, and there's the Russian Revolution. The Tsar is disposed, he's executed. Those brave Russians dragged his family down into a cellar in Siberia and shot women and children and the girls, all of them. Executed them. And in a matter of decades, what have they got? They've got Stalin, for crying out loud. How much better is Stalin than Tsar Nicholas? I don't see any difference. All that is there's just been a flip in power. And I suggest to you that changing masters is not freedom. Maybe it's a little fast. When you change masters, it's not freedom. A slave in the United States in the South, if it's moved from one master to the other, that's not freedom. He's still a slave. And there's a whole lot of people think, well, if we go from one master to another, that we'll be free. No, you're just going from one master to another. And so what's the difference between the Emperor of China and Mao Zedong? There is none. All I'm trying to do is to get you to think about the differences between the kingdom of heaven and the kingdoms of this world. And so much of the time we're trying to improve or think we're improving the kingdoms of this world when we're just going from one master to another. I believe that if we would elect the right president, that it would be a very good thing. But electing the right president is the problem. Well, I ain't going to get too far into that. I'll stir up. But I'm just saying, what's the difference? Jesus is saying, as you go, as you go through your life, whatever your life is, as you go, preach, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. As you come in contact on your job, with your family, in your neighborhood, I don't know, wherever, the opportunity presents itself, where there is someone standing there poor. And let me tell you something, the kingdom of heaven, what did I tell you? Freely you have received, freely give. The kingdom of heaven is for the very poorest of the poor. You could go into Calcutta, which is about the worst place I could think of, going into Calcutta, the ghettos of Calcutta, and you could preach the kingdom of heaven is at hand. I don't know about your socio-economic status of what I can do about that, but I can tell you the kingdom of heaven is at hand. The kingdom of heaven is accessible. The kingdom of heaven is available. The kingdom of heaven, you can reach out and by faith and take. You agree with that? For the very poorest of poor. The poor call them poor. Can be freely received. Folks, like I said, I'm not going to harp on this, but did you read? Do you read what Jesus is talking about? The kingdom of heaven and money. You just got, he's telling them, you don't. And it's not that you don't need it, but you try. Listen, what is the difference? But kingdom, here's a group of people. Here's all of the millions and I guess billions of people that are depending upon the kingdoms of this world. But there is a group of people on the face of this earth that are not looking to another human being as a source. That they are not dependent upon some kingdom of this world to take care of them or protect them or do any of these things. There is a group of people that walk the face of the earth where there is only, we've talked about desiring power and the competition for power, but in their hearts and mind, there is only one power, and that is God. That is Jesus, who is their Savior, their Lord, and the head of the church. That is their source. That is their power. That is the one who has power. And that is the one who really has power, because he is the one that can do exactly what he said there, that he can heal the sick, cleanse the leper, raise the dead, cast out demons. You tell me a politician that can do that. I don't care how great they might be. I don't care how astute, how intelligent. I don't care how many Harvard degrees or Stanford degrees they might have. Who of them can do that? And I don't care. Let me tell you, this money thing, see, money is power. And you wonder why, Bates and all these other guys, if they spent, $100,000 a day, I don't think they could spend all their money. Why? Because money is power. And they want unlimited power, so they want unlimited money. That's why they never, you never have enough power, so you never have enough money. And let me tell you something, in case you haven't realized, Bates likes power. He likes it, and it's being used. And there's a whole lot of other these guys. They're using their money and their power as influence. You don't know about it, and probably most people don't know about it. But they're doing it. But Jesus is saying, it won't be that way with you. Some of you over in Matthew, that's where I read it. Let me read it again. Matthew 20, verse 25. I read it before. I'm going to read it again. But Jesus called unto him and said, you know the princes of the Gentiles exercise dominion over them. And they that are great exercise authority upon them. But it shall not be so among you. But whosoever will be great among you, let him be your minister. Do you see the vast difference between the kingdoms of this world, the political systems, the economic systems, whatever the names they may come by, socialism, communism, democratic communism, I mean, whatever the word and all, whatever the vocabulary, do you see the difference between the kingdom of heaven and the kingdoms of this world? I don't know if you'll understand what I'm saying, but I'm going to try it. I took the kids when they were in junior high school. And they did meet you at the pole, at the flagpole. And it was a Christian thing. That's what was supposed to do is that the Christian kids in the school on this day before school, they were to meet at the flagpole. And the kids were to conduct it. They were to, whatever, make little speeches, say prayers, that thing. Meet you at the pole. And then at night, we had a rally. And it was for teenagers, loud music, the whole thing. And, it was designed for the teenagers to meet. And a couple of times is in the Walmart parking lot, all that kind of thing. So here's the picture. It's still dark. The sun hadn't come up because they're meeting before school. But I take them down there, and like I said, it's a student thing. And so I'm standing across the street. I've parked across the street. But I'm supportive of it. And so not with the group, it's just standing across the street and watching. And it's a small group. I mean, it was okay. It was maybe 100. And that's being liberal. There's 100 students out there. And they start raising the flag. And this flag starts going up. Like I said, it's still dark, but you think about enough lights around. And the flag goes up. I don't know if you're going to understand this or not. But here's this group of Christian teenagers. Here's this American flag going up. And the thought just came to me that said, it doesn't really matter what that flag is. Okay, that may shake you all up. It doesn't really matter what that flag is. Now, maybe this is something you need to think about, meditate on. I vote. I'm a citizen. I think I obey the laws most of the time. The ones I don't obey are, anyway, mostly have to do with driving a car. But, stuff like that. So I'm a good citizen. But look, what I'm trying to say is we are Christians. We are citizens of a heavenly kingdom. And yes, we are citizens of the United States of America, but that is secondary. That is secondary. And so I am a Christian American. I'm not an American Christian. You know? And I think there's some folks of races that, look, you are a Christian Afro-American. You are a Christian Hispanic. You're a Christian white person. Are you following what I'm saying? You're a Christian first. And all of these other things that may be attached come second. And maybe third or fourth, but they come after being a Christian first. I think you look around, you'll see a lot of people claiming to be Christians, that everything's different that way. Okay. Read through chapter 10. And he's sending them out that as they go to preach, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. And let me encourage you in your witnessing. Look, that's all you can do. You tell them, look, this is available to you. Here it is. They have to choose whether or not they'll receive it. The grace of God, it's a gift. And whether they receive it or not, I don't know. I don't know. You say this is available to you. Freely I have received, freely give, whether you receive it or not. But you realize with me this morning, and what I've tried to explain to you, that as you see the thing, listen, you know what's going to happen in this last few seconds, is this desire for power has grown throughout the generations and centuries until finally it is going to reach the very pinnacle apex, and it's going to be in one man. All of the desire, that in every part of his being, that desire for power will be there. And he's the Antichrist. But all of this, and all around you, you see this desire for power. And there is power, but it's in God. It's in God, not politics, not money, not all of these things. Okay. Lord, we just come to you this morning and just pray that these thoughts would be helpful.